Male identity is not something that's handed to us. It's something we have to do, seek. We perform. We do our gender. It's not just a natural given. So I think if you can get men to talk about what is really going on, then you have an avenue for opening things up. I'm supposed to know it all. I'm a man. What's the issue? All is well. Yeah, I'm in charge and control. What could possibly be to talk about? To ask questions about men, about ourselves, already indicates a failed masculinity by contemporary standards. I have a friend and colleague, Michael Kimmel, a sociologist at SUNY Stony Brook, who says real men don't study gender.
Well, I was always afraid growing up that I would be kind of the milquetoast, kind of wimpy little boy. She was always afraid of that because it was just my mom, my sister, and me. So I was kind of raised with two other women, and so she tried and she made an effort to get as much male influence in my life as she could, and that mostly came through the church that we were involved in. There's a lot of men in the church who took me camping, and a lot of firemen who showed me around. And they came over and did some of the plumbing on our house every now and then, and just kind of showed me the ropes here and there. Because my mom knew that she couldn't fill that role in my life. She just wasn't able to, and she knew that. And so I had a lot of other male influence growing up, and that was mostly older men who were kind of like adoptive fathers.
I was just sitting here trying to think of one specific person that had every quality that I would think would be a positive male role model. Working on it. I couldn't think of one. So I have numerous male role models that have certain qualities that I appreciate. In my father, it was definitely hard work. He owned a retail store years ago, and he knew that the country was in a recession probably 5 years before the government announced it. I mean, it was not difficult to figure out when he'd have $12 of sales in a day. But he did what he needed to do to make sure that his family was provided for. He did what he could do to be there for us. Luckily, we did get some help from family, but he wouldn't take it as a gift. His pride wouldn't let him do it, so I believe all the loans are paid off at this point. He doesn't need male friends. He doesn't need male companionship. He does what he needs to do by himself to get along.
He'll worry about me, and like he won't exactly show it as much as my mom does, because that's not him, but he'll tell my mom, and then I'll hear it through my mom, like, your dad's really, really worried about you. You should give him a call or something. So, that's my father.
My parents are cerebral, is probably the best way to put it. My father is very unemotive. In fact, the very different definition of unemotive. Anti-emotive would probably be better. When he did socialize, it was on a very arm's length level with other men.
He'll send me a postcard or something, and with a sentence on it maybe, and I just think, he sends a postcard maybe once a year or something, because he doesn't get around to it. It's not the way he does it. And he'll just get on the phone and we'll talk about the hockey game, or we'll talk about the football game or something. That's all we'll talk about, and that's all I need to talk about with him and everything, because I understand that it's there and I feel the love from him and everything.
Because my grandfather wasn't one to express his feelings. I can remember shaking his hand and him feeling uncomfortable giving me a hug. So if it wasn't through his wife trying to socialize my dad to be more open with his feelings, then I wouldn't be as open with my feelings as I am now. Not to say that I'm one to just talk about anything and with anybody, but I think those ideas are passed down through generations and generations.
I think when you're younger, competition's really put on you in the school system. Like, the school system puts a lot of pressure on comparisons and comparing you to your classmates instead of treating you all as one. I know they have to take into account that people may have learned at a slower rate than others, but they put a lot of emphasis on comparing you with your classmates. And competition is good, but sometimes they can get out of hand with that, and it really drives people to other means of competition to show that they're better. Maybe just because they can't excel in the classroom, they can show you that they can play sports better than you, they can fight better than you, whatever.
I think that in a way it is a competition because we enjoy practical joking on each other. We enjoy sometimes...
We're competitive people.
We definitely are competitive people. And we enjoy making each other a little uncomfortable at times, which is, it's an understanding between us. But I think that the thing that we have is that we don't take it to the point where we know that it just shouldn't be taken. We might take it to that edge, but we never jump off the edge.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody got something to prove. Everybody got to be the toughest or the roughest, especially in the black community. So, I mean, that's the main thing I want to touch. As far as childhood, maybe their fathers or people in the community, other young males, always being the best in maybe kickball. It might start from there. Being the fastest on the block, being just like a lot of pressure to be the better athlete or anything, and that type of conflict right there is alright. But then as you grow older, some people tend to get bored of the sports, bored of everything else, but then they still got to prove their manhood to somebody else. So, and maybe some people out there playing like a little pickup game, get a little foul, and they might want to, just because they losing, the foul is a reason to start something off, maybe push somebody, or heck, even worse. I mean, I've seen people get cut over basketball games because they was losing.
So to prove oneself as a man, often early years of college, for example, one overdoes it. Drinking and violence, hazing is a very important part of this. There are ritualized behaviors that men will go through to prove their masculinity to each other. It's often why men who share military background, example, feel a very strong bond with each other. Men who run sports teams together, fraternities, feel very strong bonds. Part of it comes from this shared adversity, shared difficulties of having to each prove oneself in front of the other, and then we outdo each other and prove ourselves so that then we have permission to let some of our guard down and feel close to each other. My perspective is that the real tragedy is that we have to almost kill each other in order to then feel safe enough with each other to let the barriers down and make the connections that we want to make in the first place.
I see experiences in college between like groups of people, especially fraternities, because even before I was a member of a fraternity, excuse me, I saw the competition between different ones, and sometimes it would get out of hand. Like people want to fight just because they want to prove that they can step better than each other or that they're tougher than the other fraternity.
Where I used to be, you know, where I came from, you walk through the mall or you walk on the street, you walk in the store, you see somebody, I mean, the most you'll get is a little stare down. As far as communication, is sometimes, like I try to go back home and speak to people the way people spoke to me on campus, but it didn't work. So I guess people just scared to open up, because when you speak first to somebody you don't know, it might make you look a little soft, and then people might think you a little punk or something.
So we don't connect with other men for fear of that label. Also because we men have been trained to be competitive with each other and to either seek competitive advantage ourselves or always fear that another male is viewing us as a competitor and trying to gain an advantage. So there's the fear of other men in the sense of if I let down my guard, I will be attacked or taken advantage of. Not to get indelicate about it, but there's a common slang expression which often betrays how people really think about these things. There's a slang expression in business or with people, you've got to cover your ass. That's fear of male and male rape. And it's a metaphor for the kind of taking advantage of each other and attacking that we think men do with each other.
Growing up, I'd definitely say that I had a lot more female friends than males. People can probably attest to now that I'm quite a flirt. That it.
Yep, I would agree.
It just always seemed to be natural that way. Don't really know why. I just didn't. The male relationships that I had weren't that strong. They just never really took off. I think comparatively, men need to be friends with other men less than women need to be friends with other women. I used to think that a lot more than I think now, just because I didn't have that many male friends growing up. Now I think it's nice. I like going out with the guys. I didn't realize how much I'd like it until I started doing it.
We've hung out and just talked for a lot of time.
Yeah,
actually, so.
play cards, maybe just kick back with a few beers, whatever, the normal guy things to do.
Where did you learn that those are normal guy things to do?
Probably mostly TV, media, movies, stuff like that.
Generally, my friends and I don't sit around and talk about women or sports. Talk about work, talk about school, tell stories of typical male craziness, I suppose, recklessness.
Like what?
Like the good old days stories from high school where so-and-so got loaded up and drove his car into a telephone pole, but got out of it because somebody else came and saved his ass. Whatever it is, machismo stories. Never a story of a broken heart. And generally speaking, if you have that kind of problem, they're going to leave you there. Your best advice or your best friend during an emotional period is either a woman or no one. Because 9 times out of 10, a guy won't know what to say, won't know what to do, and won't feel comfortable doing it.
When I got my hair cut, I was really, really insecure about it. And I came in, and Alan was like, your name's Style. And that to me was just like, all right, man, that felt good. And just to know that, another male would just be like, would tell me that it was like, girls would say it just to be like, oh, your hair looks good, yeah. But then, like, if a guy was like, yeah, it looks really good, it looks really, really good. And that to me it feels good that they're going to accept me that way.
Kind of, if you help me, I'll help you.
But it's not like I owe you a favor, or you owe me a favor when we help each other. It's just understood that when one needs help, the other one will do it.
Right.
So it's not like that. We're not at the point where it's like real petty and it says, oh, you did this. Do you remember that? Or even with
sometimes
money.
I joke like that. Exactly with the money.
Money,
the money.
It's just like, whatever. We order food at 2 in the morning, and
who has money now?
Who has money now is really the way it works.
You always know it'll get back to you. So he broke his arm playing basketball at the end of last semester. And then we went through a period of getting Ben dressed because he couldn't use his arm.
So Eli took care of me for a good time, my shoes for me.
Put on his pants. It was very interesting.
It was fun. It's a good time. But yeah, that was a good thing.
We do a lot. We do a lot of sitting around, hanging out, joking.
2:30 in the morning, extensive talks.
Yeah.
Those are the best times.
That's what I think the beauty of our friendship is, that we have our totally separate almost lives, and sometimes they interact and sometimes they don't, and we both accept each other's, but when push comes to shove, that I'm there for Ben and Ben's there for me. Yeah. And one of the strangest things, just to make a different side note, is about Ben is the fact that I went on spring break and he met my friends from home for the first time. I spent a quality time with them, and they said to me one night, one of them said to me, like, Ben is you in high school, are you aware of that? I'm like, excuse me, like, that is you in high school. If you ever want to see yourself in high school, look at Ben. And that's why I guess we're so friendly, because it's basically hanging out with yourself.
Like in my family, my household, my father never said anything about drugs or women. He just said, you better not be gay.
I think if any gay man or if any person tells me I'm attractive, I take it as a compliment. Why not?
Don't get your hopes up.
Thanks.
No, I don't know. It wouldn't have been a problem. Our friendship was our friendship, and whatever comes into contact with it comes into contact with, and I think it's at the point now where we realize we're going to get through it. We're not living together next year, and I think there's no way I'm not going to stay in contact with him.
I failed gym every year because I wouldn't take my shirt off. How can you not look at other people who are undressing around? You know what I mean? Like, I know that they would, but if I was to do it, it would be like, Pop, what are you looking at, faggot? So, and I got a lot of that, and like I would just do it real quick, and I wouldn't take showers in front of it. I mean, that was hell. One day I counted the number of times that the guys in the school called me faggot one day, and we went to school at 8 in the morning, and by the time it was 11 in the morning, it was up to 39, and I lost count. And a couple times it got violent, and it was always the guys. That's it. I mean, it was always the guys. It didn't even matter if it was one of my friend's boyfriends.
I've seen maybe gay people on TV, maybe walking in the street, but I never had to interact with a gay person. So to say how I would feel, I couldn't really say.
What would happen if you told your dad you were gay?
He killed me.
And I think homophobia acts as a tremendous barrier on connection and intimacy among men. One, for fear that I will be seen as one of them, and then all that comes down on my head. Heterosexism or homophobia, fear and hatred of gays and lesbians, lesbian-gay oppression, whatever term you want to use, functions as the cement or glue that keeps sexism and traditional sex roles in place. I don't depart from my traditional sex role lest I appear to be one of them.
So I was walking down the street yesterday, and I was with my girlfriends, and we were walking, and so I see these like big burly men, like, you know, strutting up the street doing their thing, like spraying testosterone everywhere, and like they walk by, and I know they're going to say something, and I look at them, and they look at me, and they start laughing, and I'm just like, and then as the split second, like they can't say it to me right when I'm looking at them, the split second that we're this, you know, like this, and they're right behind me, they're like, hey ladies, what's up, like that, you know, and it really, unless you're in the shoes of like me, I guess it's hard to understand, but that's where my fear comes from, I guess, because they can be brought together by making me feel like crap.
One of the things that has happened is that different kinds of activities in our society have been assigned to the different genders. So men are supposed to be workers and aggressive and all that, and friendships and intimacy and companionship is something we think more of women having or being able to do. What that means is that there's been a female standard for what counts as friendship. By that standard, men are not terrific at it because men have different ways of being and different ways of relating to each other. I think it's important to understand the difference, just understand the difference before we make judgments and try to evaluate which is better or which is worse. One thing that's sometimes said is that women's intimacy is face-to-face, dialogue, direct verbal interaction. Often men's friendships often talked about as being more side-by-side, shoulder-to-shoulder. Men will get together to do something and will often feel as close as women feel when they are in this direct dialogue, but men aren't talking to each other, they're just doing something. To someone with the female's model of what friendship looks like, it seems like there's nothing going on between the men. But as far as the men are concerned, they often are connecting vis-a-vis a common task, a doing something. Now each has its pluses and minuses. It's true that much male connection is roundabout, indirect, we don't talk directly to each other, and that certainly has its disadvantages. There is a lack of intimacy and connection in men's friendships and relationships. But we need to understand the different ways in which men do connect to each other.
But Ben kind of let me know that I was going a little too far, spending too much time with this significant other of mine instead of his. I got to the new RSA office, my office the other day, and I walked in and there's the desk that we just moved into this new office, and there's the desk, and it's completely wrapped in newspaper. I mean, like a big present wrapped. I get the New York Times every morning. He must take 5 New York Times and wrapped it up, and there was this big note hanging on it, and it said, "Sherry loves you so much, and you love Sherry so much, but don't forget where you come from."
A beautiful woman can make men fight real quick. It's only happened once in my life. and I regret it. It was like with a close friend, and we had a companion that we both knew, and I think egos got into it. That's what it was. It was egos got into it, and feelings got hurt, and then we started fighting. I don't want to give her the credit or anybody else the credit that we were fighting over her, but our egos got too big, and that's how it started.
I'm going to tell a story, but we joke about it. Pat's cheesesteaks in Philly is something that Eli and I have always done together. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it's over 24 hours a day. You drive down to Philly, 45 minutes, you go to Pat's, you stand outside in the freezing cold in this very Italian neighborhood, and you eat a cheesesteak. And I always joked about it with Eli. I was like, don't ever take a girl here unless you really, really mean it. And I guess it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Philly. He flew into Philly, and the girl that he's currently seeing went and picked him up. And he comes back. He goes, "I took her to Pat's." It's like, you did what? Like, you took her to Pat's?
It's like our sacred ground.
Yeah. So and it didn't. I didn't feel threatened. And we were just kidding. But I'm like, you know what this means? I'm like, this is commitment. And he kind of looks. And he's like, oh yeah, you're right.
And then if you start from my assumption that intimacy, connection, nurturing are real human needs, then to the extent we men don't do that for each other, we will continue to turn to women to do that. This is part of the sort of drivenness and neediness men often feel for heterosexual relationships. We feel like we need women who sort of feel our feelings for us and reflect them back to us. How do I know if I'm happy? The woman beside me is smiling. We must be having a good time. So if men continue to turn to women to do this emotional work of the relationship, women's abilities to do that, to be nurturing and emotional, are to my mind clearly admirable, but the requirement that women do that for men is to my mind equally clearly oppressive to women, because it keeps their energies from themselves and from other women. So there's a kind of exploitation of women's emotional labor, as the way social scientists will sometimes talk about these things, that I think is a drain on women's energies, and I think belittles men. I think we can do much better for ourselves than that kind of dependency.
And when I did rush fraternity, I didn't exactly like all the quote-unquote Jewish fraternities on campus, but that's my prerogative, and that was my choice. So I went outside and really got into a place where I feel that I fit in best. And I think the nicest part about that, when it comes to a friendship between Eli and myself, is that I can do that, and I admit I'm the only Jewish person in my fraternity out of 50 somewhat, over 50 plus guys. And it doesn't bother me, and they don't consider it they're not like, ooh, he's Jewish, da da da. It's not a big deal with them, but it's nice because I can be a part of that, and then I come back and I'm a part of this.
Yeah, you're pretty pale. You're a pretty white guy. I just to say something like that. Working in a bank will do that to you. That's your fault. Get out the
You ever say, you're pretty black?
Yeah, especially. But then he's a lifeguard. When you walk out and there's about 6 stands that way. 6 stands that way. Just look. It's not real difficult to find which stand Valencio's on. Right there. And I guess a lot of that is because I'm secure enough in how I think about things and in my standpoints and my viewpoints that I can take it as just that, just as they say it. Whether it's a joke or whether it's just saying something because they're not sure, or whether they're saying something because they don't know any better, something like that, and I'll take it that way.
Yeah, you have to grow up learning trust, learning whatever. Being relaxed. Well, I grew up the same way as a white child probably did, but there are a lot of other factors that I grew up thinking about. Like when I went to school thinking, yes, I need to do well, I'm going to play football, and I'm black. He went to school, but he didn't have that third factor in there that adds up in it.
I remember at one point, I was at a soccer practice, and someone who I thought I was pretty cool with, I was a teammate of mine, and he said, he made a comment and said something to the effect of, all you black guys run so fast, like a stereotype. And the thing is, he didn't think anything was wrong with it because he's always been around people that have accepted it and not confronted him on it. I felt I need to put him in his place, so to speak, and don't talk in those tones or manners and make references to stereotypes like that, because that's not true. Whether it's serious or not, you might be talking about running fast. He could refer to something as serious as black African Americans always rob people, but at the same, it's still serious, and there is a sensitivity a lot of times that isn't adhered to.
I would say that I would get along better with black males because there's a common bond. We share a common, like, we're the same race, so we share similarities that I can't share with white friends. But I know my freshman year when I came to school, some of my best friends were white. Like my floor mates, we used to go play soccer or play basketball or whatever. I mean, we had an intramural team or whatever, and it's fine. I mean, I bonded with them, and they were cool to hang out with. But I'm not saying that I can't be really, really cool with them. I'm not even saying I can't be a best friend, but it would be easier to be a close friend with someone who's of your same race because you understand where you're coming from. You come from a similar background, so that's how I feel.
So issues of men's connections will often look very different in different cultures. Often men who face a common experience of oppression in our culture, whether it be black men or Jewish men facing anti-Semitism or working class men, often there's a tradition of positive bonding, really for survival reasons, that's lacking among men of the more privileged group. So often you'll find black men, for example, talking in terms of really survival relationships, very strong brotherhood with another man, very important connective and supportive bonds forged that are often missing in other places.
What other ways do you think that sharing a common ethnicity, or being Jewish specifically, plays out in the way you are, the way your friendship is?
I think, like you said, it's the history that's there, but I think a comfortable feeling is when you can talk to someone, they understand exactly where you're coming from with a lot. Because it is a big part of your life. I mean, when I go home for a weekend for Passover, someone might not understand what that is. Whereas Eli, I bring him home with me because he lives all the way in Florida and I'm kind of close.
I'm of divided mind when I start to think about the future. Sometimes I think we need different images and models for masculinities and male roles and behaviors. Other times I think the problem is that we're seeking models and ideals, and we really should each be free to be individuals, and it's not substituting one ideal or role model for another. It's about being individuals and getting past roles.
And then how to get there, I think it's a lot of investment. As I said earlier, a lot of sacrificing, a lot of putting into the friendship and giving of myself and serving Timothy puts a lot of investment in that relationship, a lot of stock in it, to where it's something we both really value, and we're not going to just walk away from it at any moment. And so when I'm so confident in that, I know he'll accept me who I am and I can open up.
What do you envision being your ideal friendship with a man that's not, not romantic?
Someone who doesn't have a constant thought or fear in the back of their mind at all times being around me, and always having that thing in the back of their head that says, he's gay, or they might look at you funny if you walk down the street with them and might think you're gay too, or you're with them. That's my ideal friendship. Somebody who's secure enough of themselves to, give me everything that a friend should give someone else who's their friend. I need support. I need to be able to get things off my chest with them. I need to have fun. I need to go places with you. I'll show you new things, and you can show me new things. I mean, that's what friendship is. I need the basic building blocks of friendship, just like anybody, just as I do with my girlfriends.
What are some of the consequences of men not learning how to open up to each other?
We walk around in ignorance of ourselves and other people. We like to think we're knowledgeable, in charge, in control. This is part of male stereotypes, male roles. We're supposed to be knowledgeable and competent. I teach courses on men and masculinities. And I think it's important to validate the courage of men who would be willing to take such a course, or come to see a film about men, or come to a conversation about men, because you're pushing up against a lot of social pressures that tell you not to look at this stuff.
Don't be afraid to work with each other. Don't feel as though you have to be macho or do everything on your own and not ask for help. Don't be afraid, especially from your close friends. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it, and to don't accept help, and don't be afraid to give help where help is needed. And as far as the staff, I would say just take into account that all men are different, and that all men have their own personal needs and their own way of doing things. So just because the way they do something is not in accordance to how you do things, don't think it's automatically wrong. Just take into account that things can be done differently.